Okay, welcome everyone. As Ernie said, this is part of our Achievement Program clinics that we plan to go through all 11 certificates plus a couple added things this year. Excuse me. And in the end, all of this will be posted up on the division's YouTube page. Hopefully that'll help anybody who's looking for information about part of the AP clinics or part of the AP program. This one is on structures. And let me make sure this works. It's called Craftsmanship Recognized in Model Railroad Structure Building, and I'm Greg Cassidy of the Potomac Division. It works. Okay, so for the agenda today, we're going to have a brief introduction about the achievement program itself, and then detailed requirements about the structures certificate, a step-by-step process to understanding it, as well as specific paperwork examples, and then a quick follow-up afterwards. Now, briefly, the NMRA Achievement Program was started 65 years ago to grow skills and recognize mastery. And skilled modelers can earn awards for model building, volunteers, and leader types can be recognized for their service. Authors can earn certificates for published contributions, and layout builders can earn certificates for the completion of their model railroads. Now, structures are an integral part of the AP program because they fit right in with scenery, civil, electrical, and et cetera. While we've seen many layouts that are still waiting for structures to be put on them, it's hard to think of a completed layout without structures. Now, structures in the AP certificate can offer skill validation, community recognition, and personal growth. They can offer mastery in planning, constructing, and detailing model railroad structures. Community recognition earns respect and acknowledgement within the NMRA community, and they can foster satisfaction and pride for advanced model building. Now, there's also something on the NMRA website called the Masters, and that's a series of articles about all of the certificates that are available, and you can find it on the NMRA Achievement Program website. There is a specific one for the Structures AP certificate that was written by Rick McLennan, Master Model Railroader, and it's really worth taking a look at if you want to pursue the Structures Achievement Program certificate. Now, you have a couple of evaluation options. We try to use the word evaluations because we've been told that judging is judgmental, but the words are going to go back and forth, and you'll find plenty of paperwork on the NMRA website that still uses the word judging, so I'll be back and forth on that. You can use a structure that's already built, or you can build one just for the Structures AP if you're pursuing that. Now, you have plenty of material options. In fact, anything that you can build out of will qualify. It's common to use styrene or wood or hydrocal, but there's no requirement on what it needs to be built out of, except I don't think Legos count. Now, here's a simple hydrocal kit. This one is from Downtown Deco, but you could also make molds and cast your own hydrocal walls, and that would be considered scratch building one. If you built up one wall out of strip wood, made a rubber mold, and then casted a bunch of walls, you could build that up. Now, it's harder to cast your own styrene, but styrene is a very popular material to scratch build out of. Jeff Jordan. This particular kit is from Railway Design Associates. And this is a laser cut kit from Carolina Craftsman Kits. Wood's probably the most popular material to scratch build items out of, just because it's easy to work with and it often comes out looking like wood. Now here's a simple scratch build that's built out of wood. You can see that there are a few tissue windows and a door made, and then it had a cast resin base that it was put on. So it was a very simple wooden scratch build kit. This one was more complicated. It uses both wood, styrene, metal, and laser cut items that all get integrated together. But again, any material that you can build out of will qualify, depending on what you build. Now, we're going to be using the word merit award a lot. So, what is a merit award? They're special awards that are given out by the NMRA for being evaluated, and you can earn them either by entering a contest and asking to have it evaluated, or by having an AP director or someone designated by them to come and evaluate it. And they're granted to modelers who earn a point score of 70% of the total points available, which is 125. So that means you have to get 87.5 points. And why, in all their wisdom, NMRA couldn't come up with something that comes out to an even number, I don't know, but it's been like that for almost a century. And you can see the various categories that get judged here, and we'll go into those in a little more in detail. Many of the requirements require that you have to earn a score of at least 87.5 points, as I said, and you can do it at an NMRA-sponsored contest or by arranging to have it evaluated at a predetermined location. And this is from the definitions page. Now, this is the Master Builder Structures evaluation page. This is what you'll find in the AP category on the website. But this is only one of two forms that can be used. But you can see here, this lists all 5 of the categories that actually get evaluated. For construction, which is looking at your workmanship, you can get up to 40 points. For your detail, which looks at the quality and amount of detail, you can get up to 20 points. Your conformity, and that's if you're building a model of a prototype, how well it conforms, or the prototype practice, how well this matches the various prototypes that fit into that category. You can get up to 25 points. The same thing with finish and lettering, which is the general appearance of what you've built. You can get up to 25 points. And scratch building, that's the amount of items that are scratch built on your structure. You can get up to 15 points, and that's a little different from actually being a scratch built structure. You could have a kit that you added scratch built items to, and that would fall into that category. And you want to get over 87.5 points. Now, there's another sheet that's worth looking at if you're going to be chasing after any achievement program award, and that's what the judges' guidelines are. And that tells you what they're really looking at. And I think one of the most important things from that is the key question that they have to answer is, what was the modeler trying to do, and how well did the modeler do it? Now, as we said, where you can go for an evaluation, you could go to an NMRA contest or a division meet or a regional meet, or you could have it judged on your workbench or on a table, or it could be on your layout. All of those will apply. If you're going to enter it in a contest and also have it evaluated, when you're signing up for the contest, you want to make sure that you mention to the manager that you want the model judged for a merit award. And you need to make sure that you're ready with all of your documentation, and we'll go through what that requires as you're entering the contest. Now, a model can earn a merit award without doing well in the contest. It depends on, the other models that it's up against. You don't have to win the contest to earn a merit award. You just have to get more than 87.5 points. And a couple other contest rules, if that's the direction you go. Multiple structures, such as a house and a garage, must be physically connected to be considered one structure. And this applies if you're being evaluated no matter where. But this is part of the contest requirements. And a single structure contained within the display can be entered in the structure category, in which case only the structure will be judged, not the entire display. So if you build a diorama and you have a house here and you have a garage here and you have outhouses or something, only the structure will be evaluated, not the entire diorama. Now, I find this very insightful. Both the structures and the cars category require a combination of highly detailed and scratch-built models. If you are an experienced enough model railroader to be interested in the Master Model Railroader program, building highly detailed or super detailed models is probably already a skill that you have. And this is our previous AP chairman, Matt Thompson, who said this. Now, we'll take a look at the requirements. First one is to construct 12 structures. Sounds like a lot, it's really not. At least 6 different types of structures have to be represented. One of them must be a bridge. At least 6 of them have to be scratch built. And the remaining 6 have to be super detailed. And a new one that they've just added is that up to 3 of the 12 models can be a low relief model. Now that's not a background flat. What low relief means is they have to have at least 10 scale feet of depth on the sidewalls and the roof and be super detailed. Flats with no appreciable roof or sidewalls don't qualify. And that should open it up really big for a lot of scratch builders because you only have to build 3 sides instead of 4. Now, requirement number 2 is you have to earn a score of 87.5 points at least on 6 of the 12 models that are evaluated. And then number 3, you have to submit a completed statement of qualification, and you'll see what that is, giving the achievement details, the identification of scratch-built features, list of the commercial components, and a verification of the merit awards. And all this is spelled out in the requirements. Now, there's reading between the lines. Some of the best reading between the lines are race car designers. Smokey Yunick was well known for bending the rules, and one of his most famous examples was a 7/8 scale race car, that was before they had templates, that was aerodynamically superior and had an 11-foot long, 2-inch diameter fuel line that held 5 extra gallons to reduce the pit stops. And in Formula One, Braun GP came out with their double diffuser back in 2019. They were exploiting a loophole regarding the definition of a diffuser, which exits the air from underneath the car and creates downforce. And they came up with a double-decker system that significantly generated more downforce. And despite protests, it was legal, and they went on and won the championship that year. So read between the lines. Don't just look at the requirement and say, I can't do that. Okay, for the first part, you must construct 12 scale structures. At least 6 different types must be represented. Now, that's to show that you can model a variety of types of structures, not just several variations of the same type. For example, a wood frame station and a brick station would be different. But 2 wood frame stations, you might have trouble defining how they're different unless their construction is different. And remember, you only need 6 different types. So, you can build a couple that are similar, just can't build all of them that are similar. And keep in mind, this is important, anything man-made that is not motive power or a rail car is a structure. And it opens up the whole world of what a structure can be. Now, here are a few examples. We have 2 different stations. One of them is wooden and single story. The other one is brick and has 2 stories. So that's 2 different structures, 2 different types of structures. Here's 2 different freight houses. One is wooden and metal siding. The other one is brick siding. 2 different types of structures. Now, we have here 2 different scale houses. They're both wooden. They're both single story. They don't look alike, but are they 2 similar structures? Well, that would depend upon your AP manager when he's looking at them and what you actually built. But they might not qualify as 2 different structures. Now, more reading between the lines. One of the 6 types must be a bridge or trestle. You don't need to build something that would cross a gorge. You don't have to have one of those fantastic trestles that make it on the front cover of a magazine. You just need to build a bridge. Now, you could build a simple bridge that your rails are going over a creek or a roadway, or you can build a bridge for a roadway going over your tracks. It just says you have to build a bridge, and you have to show that you know basically how to build something that would carry the loads. And remember, you don't have to have the bridge on a layout. In fact, this is the bridge that I had qualify. It's a 100-line king post bridge. And frankly, I had a bridge on my layout that probably would have qualified as well, but this is what I submitted, and it worked. So one of your items does have to be a bridge. That doesn't mean that's going to take a year out of your life. More reading between the lines, at least 6 of the models must be scratch built. And the following parts are excluded: light bulbs and electronics, paint and decals, figures, and basic shapes of wood, plastic, and metal. Now, models considered scratch built if at least 90% by count of the model's pieces or parts, other than those exempted, are fabricated by the modeler. Now, that's an objective quantitative count. That means the number of pieces with no weight given to the complexity. And the term scratch built carries the implication that the builder has accomplished all of the necessary work to create that item. If you designed it and you 3D print it or you laser cut it, that qualifies as scratch built. If you designed it and had somebody else 3D print it, doesn't count. And the same thing applies to if you wanted to cast something. If you make the mold and you cast the hydrocal, that counts as scratch built. You can't use a pre-made mold and then cast the hydrocal and count that as scratch built. Now, here are some examples of scratch built items that were part of my portfolio. 3 of them were pretty difficult. In fact, 2 of them took a number of months out of my life, but it was needed to be done. 3 of them were really simple and didn't take very long at all. In fact, one of them was already done until I didn't think of it until I thought of it. So scratch building doesn't have to be hard, and especially now that they have the rule that you can use a low relief building. Now, here's a little tip for scratch building. You need to have at least 90% by count of the model's pieces fabricated by the modeler. So count your manufactured parts that you're going to be using and then multiply that by 10. Subtract your original manufactured parts, and the number that you're left with is how many scratch build parts you need to use. My wife is a science teacher. She said, here's a formula for it. I don't understand that, but maybe some of you do. But basically what that means is if you're building something and you've got 5 manufactured parts, say 4 tissue windows and a door, you need to multiply that by 10, that's 50. Subtract those 5, that's 45 pieces. So you need to scratch build 45 pieces for that structure to be considered scratch built. So you want to count your rafter tails when you're putting them on, stuff like that. More reading between the lines, the remaining 6, if not scratch built, must be super detailed with scratch built or commercial parts. Now, there are all sorts of ways to super detail structures. Look closely at what you're trying to model and look at all the little things like signs, ladders, roof details, etc. The interior is a great way to add details, especially if you can have some way of seeing there. And adding details to your structure not only meets that part of the requirement, but adds to your overall score and the overall appeal of the building. Now, what is super detailed? Okay, here's the definition from the NMRA website as of January 2026. A model is considered super detailed if the modeler has added separate details that are critical to the operation and use of the model's prototype. The details may be separately applied parts provided as part of the kit, but not parts applied by the manufacturer. Now, minimum requirements for structures includes things like roof details, vents, ridge caps, valley flashing, utility hookups, and stuff that's appropriate for the prototype modeler. Interior details for structures and passenger cars include rolling stock, are suggested but not required. Now, that doesn't mean in order to be super detailed, you need all of those. You don't need vents and ridge caps and valley flashing and gutters and downspouts and utility hookups. It's just the more of those type of things you have, the more the super detailed parts will count towards points for you. So add as much as you can and make it look good when you're adding them. Don't just glue them all over the thing. Here's a couple examples of super detailing. This was an O-scale structure of a conservatory, and they had some additional interior details that came with the kit, but they are separate pieces. And I also gathered together a number of other interior pieces that I included myself. So that was super detailing on the interior. Here's an example of super detailing on the exterior. All of the signs, the lights, the oil tanks and vending machines and stuff that's part of the building count as super detailing. And here's an example of using interior and lighting for super detailing. This was a simple kit, but it was empty, and with that big window, it had to have an interior. So I got all of those pieces off of online sources and included them, and also added lighting as well as see-through curtains so that when the lighting shines through, you can see them. And all of that counted towards extra super detailing. Now, documentation and submission, the paperwork. Oh my God, the paperwork. Okay, here are the guidelines from NMRA. Provide thorough paperwork, photos, construction methods, and prototype research evidence. Submit using an NMRA prescribed format to ensure consistency and fairness. Strong documentation validates the quality and building process and educates the evaluators, the judges. Now, you can't get away from the paperwork. We all like building models, but paperwork's part of it if you want to go after this or any of their certificates. There are two types of forms that are going to be involved. The one on your left is the 2019 Structures Evaluation Form. And if you're building 12 structures, you're going to fill out 12 of these. The one on the right is the Statement of Qualifications. And once you've built all 12 of yours and you've had them evaluated and you're ready to submit, you fill out your Statement of Qualifications and send that in with some abbreviated paperwork. So first, we'll cover the evaluation form. Now, there are two of them, just to make things confusing. One of them is what NMRA recommends that your evaluator uses, and that's the one on the left, the 2019 Structures Evaluation Form. It's very simple. It just has the 5 categories and the places for the judge to mark down the points and to sign it. The one on the right is the contest entry form, which can also be used. Now, if you're doing that, you might want to make sure you check with your AP evaluator at the time to make sure that that works for him. In our case right now, I know it does, but there's a changing of the guard. You want to make sure. The advantage of that form, first of all, that's what you use if you enter your structure in a contest, because that's going to be the contest form. It doesn't have your name on it so that people aren't, knowing, well, I'm going to vote for my friend. But what it does have is little check boxes that can help remind you of stuff that you might not have remembered. You built the model a month ago. You're finally getting around to the paperwork. You didn't remember that you had to cut 4 pieces of cardboard to fit something. Oh, there's a checkbox. That's right, I cut some cardboard. I'll check that. It also gives you a place to start writing all of your information. Now, there's going to be a continuation form that you have to apply to, especially the one on the left, because there's no place to write anything, but also if you run out of room on the one on the right. And that's that form, which isn't an official form. This is just something I made up. It's a template I made because it has all 5 of the categories, and if I run out of room on one form, or for the other form where there is no room to write stuff, that's where you put all of the information that you need to pass on to the judge for him to evaluate it. See, I used both words in one sentence. And this is just a simple word template that I made, and then for each one, I'd fill in what I needed to. Now, following are some examples of paperwork. So some of the forms that I used have been updated, as you just saw. So when you see my forms, they have the same information essentially, they just look a little different. So this is one of my scratch build. This one is called Weigh Scales. And this was an agent station with the scale that I built for a friend down in Williamsburg. Now, this is what the previous Form 902, the contest evaluation form, looked like when I was filling it out. And then that's my continuation sheet. So you see where I entered all of the information there, and I checked the boxes where it was appropriate. And then this is my continuation form where I ran out of room on that first form. And if for some reason you're using the downloaded evaluation form that doesn't have any space on it, this will be where all your notation is. But this isn't the only paperwork. It's useful to have a few photos showing what you built and if there's any prototype conformity that you want to adhere to. Now, something to remember. First of all, they don't want tons of paperwork. They don't want something this thick. They want a few sheets. What you want to show in your photographs is stuff that isn't really apparent by looking at the structure. Like, I can look at this wonderful structure here. I can see that it has corrugated roofing that's been weathered, and I can see that the walls are glued together. I don't need to put in the paperwork that I glued the walls together and I made corrugated roofing. What you want to put in your photos is something that you did that maybe isn't obvious, that they can't see, but that will help them in evaluating the structure. By the way, I hope some of you get a chance to take a look at this. This is one of Martin's structures that is beautiful. Those are all the photos of that structure that myself and the guy I was building it for could find. And so in trying to match that, I scratch built everything as good as I could, and you'll see that I believe my conformity came out as a 25, and that's because I had all of those photos showing it from as many angles as possible and how I had tried to conform to it, and that worked out. Now, sometimes your conformity may not, if you're building a critter, you're not going to find a critter just like yours unless you're actually modeling a specific one. But still, if you can show a couple other critters that have similar ideology to them, that can help. Now, for the Connecticut River Railroad freight house that I built, this was something that I had seen only one picture of it, but I wanted to build it, and I had to scratch build it. So you'll see I have very little on both sheets. That's because almost everything was scratch built. So I didn't have to explain a whole lot except that I scratch built it. I did fill it out, and I don't remember what the evaluation was, and only one line on my continuation sheet. But I had photos of how I had scratch built it, and I had the one photo that somebody took of after that wall had collapsed, and I had found it on a Sanborn map. So that was all the conformity I had, but that was enough for me to show that I had matched it as good as possible. Now, for Mount Union Scale House, this is another scratch built that we did have a lot of information on, and I was building it again for another friend down in Williamsburg. And this one, because it was already on his layout when I was applying for the certificate, I had to ask the evaluator, I forget his name, but down in the Tidewater Division, to go over and take a look at it. What was it? Chuck Davis. I got in touch with him and said, would you mind, if it's not too difficult, to go over and evaluate this? And I sent him all the paperwork. So because of that, we have both forms filled out. And that's because I sent him both forms and not knowing which he would prefer. And they went ahead and used both forms. They filled them out identically. And Matt Thompson was also one of the people who went to evaluate that with Chuck. And this shows, I had photos showing how I had built it. We had as many photos of the original structure as possible, plus we had a number of plans that I'd gotten from the Pennsylvania Historical Society and technical whatever. So you can see in this one, and I forgot to mention any others, in this one I used 18 manufactured parts, and it had over 200 scratch build parts, so that was over the 90%. But this is how the paperwork shows what I did and how I conformed to the prototype. Now, Darden's Mill was based on an actual kit that was based on an actual building. And I was building this kit for a friend, but the kit was not a very good match for the actual building. And that's because it was built to sit flat, but the actual building sat on a slope, so it had 2 stories on one side, 3 stories on the other. So I knew I was going to have to do some kit bashing. So I wrote down everything that I did, including the scratch building, which was a lot of the part of kit bashing, as well as conformity. I was having to kit bash a lot of stuff in order to conform with the prototype building. And again, my continuation sheet. And this shows all of the extra work that I did in kit bashing it in order to conform, and then photos of the building in the era that I was building it and how well it conformed to that. So this was not a scratch build, so I wasn't having to, meet the 90% requirement. But it did have a lot of scratch build parts on it, which helped increase the score. Now, for a small scale house, and this is one way that you can help get around that 90% difference. This was a kit, well, no, it wasn't a kit. It was a building that I built for a friend, and he had a resin cast base that he wanted a structure on. And I said, how about a scale house? He said, that's fine. So I went ahead and built a scale house for him. And you see, most of it is scratch built, but I used a few tissue parts, I think 4 windows and a door or something. And that came out to 7 manufactured parts if you include the base. And I scratch built 50 parts when I added them all up, all the rafter tails, all the roofing, everything. Now, that's only 88%. But when I built it for him, it was before I was actually thinking of applying for this. He had it on his layout for a couple of years. And then I went to him and said, is it okay if I add a shed onto the back of that? So I brought it back. I built a little shed using board by board construction. And I went ahead and put that on the back of it. And now I've still got 7 manufactured parts, but 108 scratch built parts. You add up all the planks, including the scratch built door, and that takes me over my 90%. So, that's one way that, count every single part if you're adding it up for a scratch build. Now, here's the very last one that counted as a scratch build. That I was up to the 11. I had 6 merit awards. I had 5 scratch build items. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got to scratch build something else. And I was looking at my layout, and I said, 30 years ago, I built that radio tower that's up on that mountaintop. Now, when I built that, the bottom piece, the part that's in red, was basically a support for a trestle or something that I had never used. And I said, when I was building the radio tower, I said, okay, I'll just build out of styrene shapes the rest of the tower. And so everything above that was scratch built. And I added up all the parts. I had 1 manufactured parts, 64 scratch built parts, 98%. It's the only item that counted towards my structures certificate that was actually on my layout at the time. So once you've done all that, what do you do with all that paperwork? Well, as I was going through the building process, and this took a couple of years because I had some stuff built, but I had to build some other stuff. I kept a notebook that I kept all this stuff in. 3-ring binder, I punched everything. I had tabs for all of the different categories that I was going to be working towards. And I just kept putting the stuff in there as I put the paperwork together, which was going to be, with each submission when I was having it judged. Now, once you get all of your 12 pieces together, you have your 12 evaluation forms that are all signed. Hopefully 6 of them have merit awards and 6 of them are scratch built. Then you go to your statement of qualifications, and this is for master builder structures. And this is the one that you only fill out one time. It's a 2-sided form. You do the front where you just check off the boxes, put in your name and all your personal information. And on the back, you list all of the items that qualify. And you have places where you can mark whether it was scratch built, yes or no, whether it earned a merit award, yes or no, and the names of the evaluators. Now, they don't need to sign on this sheet because they signed on your evaluation sheet. So when you submit this, you're going to submit a copy of the evaluation sheet and something that you put together, because the requirement when you send in the submission is you have to send in some information about each structure. So this is another thing that you have to make, but it's easy. You do 1 page in Word. It basically is a breakdown of how the structure was built. If it was scratch built, you talk about scratch building. If it was super detailed, you talk about that. And a photo. They like to see a photo of it. And you do this for each structure that you're submitting on your statement of qualifications. And you can see, you can put as much or as little information as you want in. And for each one, you're going to do this. So you'll have 12 of these for each of the structures that you're submitting for your structure AP. Now, once you're done with all that, there's 2 ways, I guess 3 ways if you live in Tennessee and you want to drive it there. But there's 2 ways to submit it. electronically or through mail. And I've talked with Ray Persing, who is the NMRA Achievement Program coordinator or manager. And he says over 90% of the submissions they get are electronic, which is what they want. They'd probably rather have it at 100%. But now, so what are you going to do? You're going to take all of that paperwork that was filled out, the evaluation sheets, and the single pages where you described what you built and have a picture of it, and you're going to scan those into your computer as PDFs. And if you need any help doing that, you can get in touch with me. I'm happy to do it for you. I live in Maryland, sorry. And then you're going to take all those PDFs and combine those into one PDF, if you can do that. Now, if you can't do that, you can send the individual PDFs to your AP coordinator, and he'll be happy to combine them. Or he may not be happy, but he'll still do it. He might grumble a little bit, but he'll do it for you. Or an alternative, again, get in touch with me. I have the software. I'm happy to do that for anybody if they need it done. And then once you send in that PDF to your AP manager, and he forwards it to Ray Persing, and they finally get something in the mail, your certificate comes back to you. Yes?
Actually, it gets forwarded to the region.
To the region, and then
forwards to the national.
Yeah, 3 stops, but
yeah.
Emails are faster than snail mail. So.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, not always. Now, what have I done since I earned my Achievement Program certificate for structure building? Well, I keep building structures. That's why I got that. I love building structures. I've run out of room on my layout, so I just put them on shelves. And I also completed 3 other AP certificates so far, as well as the Golden Spike Award, which is part of the Achievement Program. Now, here are a few thoughts that I have as I was putting all this together. It appears most master model railroaders have earned their Master Builder of Structures. It's not one of those that only a few people have earned. You can be building in plastic or wood or hydrocal. It's all about the building. That's what really matters. Structures can be evaluated anywhere, either at a show or at a club meeting or at your home. Here's a saying: nothing worthwhile was ever accomplished without the will to start, the enthusiasm to continue, and regardless of temporary obstacles, the persistence to complete. And that was Wade Phillips, who started Phillips Petroleum over 100 years ago. And I like this one. A structure built as is like a major chord. It may be nice, but it's plain. A structure that's weathered or has lots of detail or is interesting, it's like a minor chord. It's real, it's interesting, it has depth. There are tons of excuses not to do it, but there are tons of reasons to do it. You might as well get something out of your $68 instead of just belonging to a club. And you can use the NMRA, and you can use the Achievement Program to increase your skills. So there's no better time to get started if you haven't already. And that's it.